Hi, good evening everyone. It's Catrin from KISS, Keto It's Simple for Success. Here tonight on day 8 of the May Challenge, and here to talk to you this evening all about the science of weight loss. So we're going to talk a little bit about what sort of things make us gain weight in the first place and what sort of things we can do to get our weight loss going. So we're going to talk about hormones in particular and how different types of food impact our body's hormones, and which of the hormones actually make our bodies go into fat storage mode, and which of those hormones actually put our body in fat burning mode. So those are the things that we're going to talk about. At the moment, I am live in the KISS public group. If you're watching on YouTube, hi. I really hope that you choose to subscribe to the channel and drop some comments and get some notifications as well if you'd like more of the same sort of stuff. Normally on this channel, we're talking about the ketogenic diet, we're talking about intermittent fasting, weight loss, health, lean body mass, hormones, and generally everything to do with high fat and low carb. So please do consider subscribing. So like I said, tonight is day 8 of our May Challenge. If you're not yet following along with this May Challenge, I don't really know why. I'm going to drop the links in the description of the video to actually point you in the direction of the May Challenge, the resources that we have available to you in terms of some the foods that we're eating, the challenge rules, so how we're going to eat during May, and some of the things that are really going to help you accelerate your weight loss, achieve your fat burning goals, and ultimately get fitter, healthier and happier. So please do have a look at the links below, first of all for our May Challenge, but secondly, you could be live with me in the Facebook group right now. So you can join as a member of the public group. Again, it's all in the links for you. And if you would like to follow along with a more structured plan, then please do consider the 28-day meal plan and beginner's guide. It's a 42-page ebook that I wrote based on a trial with 60 people involved. So what it has in there is the absolute top tips really for getting this ketogenic diet to work for you. There's no tracking, there's no weighing, there's no apps, it's just whole foods, ketogenic eating. It has all of your shopping lists in there and everything that you need to spend the first 28 days of your ketogenic journey, or any 28 days of your ketogenic journey, 100% keto, 100% on track, and 100% working towards your goals. So I really do hope you have a look at that if that's your thing. And again, links below. So we're going to crack on tonight, if that's okay. Like I said, we're live. So if you are watching at the moment, I know there's a few people there, feel free to say hello, drop a comment, love the post, whatever you want to do. It would be great to have a chat to you this evening. So, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about weight loss. So what does it mean in terms of gaining weight? How does the body do that? Why does it do it? And also have a look at weight loss and some of the hormones and the physiology behind it. We're going to strip back some of the voodoo around low carb eating so that you understand exactly how the body does it and why it does it. So the first one we're going to talk about is how our body gains weight in the first place. Now, what you'll probably understand if you are on a ketogenic or low carb eating plan is that the top thing that makes the body gain weight is intake of carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are what the body uses for energy when it's in a carb burning state, but also what it uses to build its fat stores for periods of time where food is scarce. So if you can imagine then, the human body was evolved in a period of time where food was very scarce in the environment. So during the summer months where things like fruit were very, very plentiful, early humans would spend time during that period eating carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates would trigger more carbohydrate cravings. So they would often gorge themselves on fruit, becoming fat over that summer period, building their body fat stores over the summer, so that when the trees weren't fruiting and food was more difficult to get, they had body fat stores. So if they had to spend long periods of time fasted, hunting for game, and having to track animals, then they had those stores of body fat there to enable them to do that. So carbohydrate was very much, and it's always been something that humans have eaten, but it's been seasonal, and it's been in order for the body to gain weight, to put on body fat for periods of time where food was more scarce. So if we want a very simplistic view, carbohydrates are what fattens the body in a very simplistic way. So how does that happen? Well, when we take on carbohydrates, first of all, we taste them on our tongue. Hi there. We taste them on our tongue. That triggers the brain to start to produce something called insulin. Insulin is produced by the pancreas in the body to actually move carbohydrates from our blood. So the blood sugar, the sugar that's created when we process and digest carbohydrates, it takes it from our blood and stores it in our cells. Hi Keris, that is what carbohydrate does. That is what insulin does. It's our storage hormone. So when we eat carbohydrates, we trigger insulin. Hi Sherry. We trigger insulin, and that insulin then triggers our cells to start taking up carbohydrates and start taking up sugar from the blood. So that's what insulin does. Now, obviously, if we're going to use that carbohydrate for energy, that's not so much of an issue at all. In fact, if we could all burn off the carbohydrates that we eat, then we wouldn't be having enough carbohydrates to store as body fat. However, that unfortunately is not the case for the majority of people. That's why we're here. For the majority of us, this is what happened. We ate too many carbohydrates. So what happens then if we can't use all the carbohydrates we're eating? Well, first of all, the liver will turn any excess carbohydrates into glycogen. And glycogen is stored glucose, and it can be stored in the liver, and it's stored in muscles for use when our blood sugar drops back down. So when we're not eating, but we're carbohydrate driven, we're running off our body's glycogen stores, and that produces goes back into glucose basically for the muscles and all the cells of the body to use for energy. However, there is only a certain amount of glycogen that our liver and our muscles can actually store. However, we are more than capable of eating a lot of carbohydrates, particularly in the modern Western diet. There's more carbohydrate than we actually need. So glycogen stores quickly fill, and any excess carbohydrate from that point, insulin pushes into fat cells as fat. So the liver turns the glucose into triglycerides, into fat molecules, and those fat molecules are then pushed into the fat cells by insulin, which is our storage hormone. So you can see then that it's this carbohydrate intake and the insulin, which the carbohydrate intake stimulates, that allow the body to start storing fat. And insulin, being a fantastic storage hormone, preserves those stores. So as long as you have insulin going around the body, so as long as you're eating carbohydrates, the insulin will keep your fat stores protected and safe inside your fat cells. In other words, with insulin around, it becomes almost impossible to burn body fat. In fact, all you end up doing is burning through your glycogen stores until your next meal, until you next eat. So insulin has a huge impact, not just on the original storage of the fat, but also in preserving your fat stores. So insulin makes you fat and it keeps you fat. So it's just to be aware that insulin is this massive driver of our weight and our body fat composition. So it's that insulin that when we're on a low carb diet or a ketogenic or following the KISS plan, the whole point of that way of eating is to reduce insulin down as low as possible. So I hope that's, in a nutshell, gives you an understanding of how we get fat in the first place and how continuing to eat carbohydrates in the diet maintains that body fat. So how then do we go about changing this? What is it that we need? What is the opposite of insulin in a way? How do we switch that insulin, that storage hormone off, and that preservation of fat hormone off? Well, it's very simple. Without carbohydrates in the diet, insulin is not stimulated. So the number one thing that we do in order to stop insulin from storing fat, but also to allow the opposite hormone to insulin, which is glucagon, how do we make that rise? Well, we just keep carbohydrates low. And we've also talked in previous videos about the fact that we will stimulate insulin every time we eat. Whether or not there's going to be a lot of carbohydrates in that meal, we will still stimulate insulin every time we eat. So by reducing the number of times that we eat, we also reduce the amount of insulin that our body is having every day. So this is why we talk about removing snacks from the diet and instead taking full advantage of the meals that we eat instead. We have to eat. That's there is no way around that. We have to eat. So when we do eat, we take full advantage. We know that the body's going to release insulin and it's going to push that nutrients into our cells, and that's fine. But what we want to do is make sure that we reduce the amount of insulin as much as we can and reduce the incidences of insulin as well. So that allows, like I said, the opposite hormone of insulin to be stimulated, and this is glucagon. Glucagon is stimulated when energy around the body is low. So if we're running low on blood sugar, if we're running low on glycogen, then glucagon tells those fat cells to start releasing fat so that the body can turn that fat into ketone bodies and just to use it because fat can just be used as a fuel source anyway. So it actually tells those fat cells, release the fat. We need energy in the body. It's time for you to do what you were designed to do. So instead of storing fat, our fat cells start releasing it so that our muscle cells and our brain cells and all the cells in the body and start using that fat as an energy source. And the vast majority of our cells have a preference to burning fat and in fact are far more efficient. And the mitochondria, which is the part of the cell that is actually the engine part of the cell, runs really, really efficiently on fat and ketone bodies. So worth knowing that our body actually likes to run on fat and is more efficient. However, with insulin around, it doesn't have the choice. Insulin will stop this fat being released to use as energy, and this is why we need to keep insulin low. So it's glucagon then that tells the body to start to release energy into its system. Rather than preserving the energy in the fat cells, it's glucagon that tells us, hi Gail, it's glucagon that actually tells us to start to release energy. So in a very sort of simplistic way, it is very much our carbohydrate intake, which is a big driver of our weight and also maintains the fat that we store on our bodies. It's insulin that does that. So let's talk about insulin then, because if we become overweight, if we fill our fat cells up to their full capacity, and there does come a point where we can't actually make more fat cells either. There does come a point where the fat cells can't take on any more fat. They're at their maximum capacity. But at that point, you still can have rises in blood sugar. Now, what does the body do? Well, the body starts to produce more and more insulin to try to push that blood sugar into the cells. But the cells can't take any more. The cells have as much glucose as they can take. The liver has as much glycogen as it can take. The muscles have as much glycogen as they can take. And now the fat cells are full of fat as well. There is nowhere for this energy to go. And at that point, the blood sugar rises again. So more insulin is created by the body to try and maintain a healthy blood sugar. There does come a point, however, where that isn't the case. We can't keep up with the blood sugar that we have in our system from our carbohydrate intake. And at this point, not only do you become insulin resistant, but you could potentially end up going down, yes, glycogen. Yeah. So we could start going down the road to type 2 diabetes, which is where I ended up. Basically, my fat cells were full. Genetically, we have a predisposition for the amount of fat cells that we can produce. We do get to the end of that capacity. And at that point, if we still continue to eat carbohydrate, there does come a point where we cannot produce enough insulin to deal with that. And the blood sugar starts to rise to dangerous levels. And that's type 2 diabetes. So you can understand then that this is where the process of obesity and carbohydrate intake goes. It goes on to obesity, insulin resistance, and potentially type 2 diabetes and all the complications that come with this metabolic disorder. So worth understanding that whether or not you are diabetic, then potentially if you continue to eat carbohydrates, then that is potentially where that could lead you. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Completely understand. And I wasn't diagnosed until I went to the doctor with a skin condition either. So that's when I had my diagnosis and knew I had to do something about it. Okie dokie. So two competitive hormones then, insulin and glucagon. Glucagon is what we want. It's a catabolic process, and you've probably heard me use that word before. And there's 2 processes in the body. Anabolic, which is building, and catabolic, which is breaking down. Now, for me personally, I spent 36 years in an anabolic state, eating and getting bigger. And now I'm in a catabolic state for a lot of the time in the day, and actually break down the energy and the body fat on my own body and use it as fuel. So that catabolic state is what we need to achieve in order to start losing weight. And to start breaking down the fat cells and releasing that energy that they have stored there. Okie dokie. So I talked a little bit about that. Okay, so we talked about number of meals as well. That's really important. And in fact, fasting is one of the most powerful tools in reducing insulin and reducing the insulin resistance that we have. So it makes us more susceptible to insulin, and the body doesn't actually have to produce so much insulin when we do eat. So fasting is a really, really... Hi, Helen. Hi there. It's good to hear that you're hooked. I came home to news that you were joining the group, so I'm really pleased. So we were talking a little bit about glucagon and insulin and how they're important. But there are other factors involved in weight loss. And I know there's people eating low carb, eating ketogenically, and still not seeing the amazing weight loss results that they would love to see. So we have to understand that there is more here than just a simple equation between insulin and glucagon. There are other hormones at work in the body. For example, there's other hormones that actually influence the amount of insulin that we produce. So even if we were fasting, the body still will have fluctuations in levels of blood sugar, in levels of insulin and things like this. So we need to know that it's far more complicated than just removing the carbs. That's just step 1. And there are other steps involved in tweaking our weight loss and getting it to work for us. So the next thing to have a think about then is, like I said, the amount of time that we spend burning our body fat. So if you can imagine then, the body will always go for dietary fuel, so dietary fat, over body fat, because it wants to preserve as much of its body fat as it can. It's very sneaky like that, the body. It still thinks that it's 2000 BC and we don't know when the next herd of animals will be passing through. So what it will do is always take preference over any dietary fat and maintain as much body fat as it can, because ultimately that's the body's life jacket. That's what the body thinks keeps it going when we have a lack of energy. So let's see what Sherry's written here. So Sherry said, I'd love to lose weight a little faster, but happy to be slow and steady as I'm feeling so many health benefits that I've never had with any other way of eating. And I totally get that. We would all love to wake up tomorrow and be at our goal weight. However, as we're going to go through this session, I hope you'll understand that there are more processes ongoing in the body. And one of the things that a ketogenic way of eating will do when you are losing weight, but it's also going to heal a lot of the organs and a lot of the systems of the body as well. So we'll talk about that and some of the advantages that you get, which are not just about weight loss, because weight loss is kind of the bonus that we get from healing the body and turning the body back into its healthy, natural state. So let's have a think about number of meals then. Dietary fat will be burned for about 6 to 8 hours after a meal. So if we're having a high fat ketogenic meal, obviously we're taking on plenty of energy because there's no deficits, there's no hunger here. So we're eating plenty of food, and the body will burn dietary fat for 6 to 8 hours after that meal. So if you can imagine then, fat burning starts 6 to 8 hours past your last meal. So if we're not spending a significant time of our day in a fasted state, then potentially all we could do is burn dietary fat. So that's why when we talk about food windows and stopping eating as early as we can during the day, what we get then is more hours through the evening, through the night, and into the next morning, instead of burning dietary fat, actually having glucagon, releasing body fat, which is where we want to go. So when we're talking about reducing insulin and getting into a fat burning state, it does take about 6 to 8 hours after the last time we ate for the body to run out of dietary fat and actually move on to body fat. So this is why you'll hear me talking about food windows and why it's important not to snack in the evening and things like that. So it actually gives you that time of body fat burning. So if we're eating from dawn till dusk, we're not having any time at all burning our body fat, and we're just burning dietary fat. And sometimes we can start to stall and plateau and not lose the amounts of weight that we would like to. So it's nothing to do with the amount of calories we're eating. It's about the amount of time that we're spending burning our body fat. So just to be aware of that. Okie dokie. So moving on then. So let's talk about calories, because obviously I mentioned that keto is not low calorie, and I hope that everybody on my channel and in the groups has a firm understanding now from reading the blogs on calories and from understanding that low carb and low calorie are very, very different animals. So we don't have to drop calories, and in fact, what we want to do when we're eating ketogenically is keep our metabolism nice and high. We do that by giving the body enough fuel so it actually doesn't have to compensate, doesn't drop the metabolism in order to stay a healthy weight. Our body wants to stay the same. It wants to stay fat because our fat is our life jacket. So you can imagine if we lower calories, if we eat less food, what the body will do is simply slow the metabolism. It'll make you feel lethargic. It'll make you feel like you don't want to get off the sofa. It will drop your body temperature and stop you moving around as much because it will compensate for the lack of energy in the diet. So what I'm saying is we need to actually keep our metabolism really, really high. And we do that through eating plenty of food, plenty of fat, moderate protein. We're not going to drop our calories. We're going to eat plenty. What that's going to do is maintain the metabolism high. If not, we can boost it up even. We can get our metabolism to burn faster by eating more food. So what happens then with all this energy that's going in? Well, because our insulin is low, if we're not eating carbohydrates, the body has no way of storing it. It doesn't store body fat without insulin around. It doesn't store anything really without insulin around. That storage hormone is off. So instead, the body will use the fat that it needs And any excess fat, any excess energy going around the system will be burnt. So what that means is the metabolism will increase, our body temperature will increase, and our body functions will increase. For example, you may notice an increased rate of hair growth, increased rate of nail growth, lean muscle growth, and healing of the body system. So it will have the energy it needs, not just to stay the same, but it will have enough energy to heal the body. It will finally be able to heal the gut and heal your liver and heal all the organs of the body, which have probably taken a bit of a battering over the years. It will have all the energy that it needs to start replacing cells at a faster rate, and reduce, for example, the aging process. So increasing the metabolism is something that's really, really good. So don't be afraid of fat. Don't be afraid of eating food. It's really, really important that you fuel the body. And then, of course, if you have a high metabolism, you can imagine that when you fast, when you're in that fasted state, then you're going to burn fuel, you're going to burn body fat at a faster rate. So having this fast metabolism is multifaceted and really, really positive. So I want you to look around yourself, because I know this is probably not the only keto group that you're a member of. For a lot of people, have a look around you. Understand the science behind it, and understand that dropping calories will just end up with you stopping losing weight, because your body will compensate. It will drop your metabolism, and along with your metabolism, it's going to drop its functions down as well. It's going to preserve as much energy as it possibly can, and it could actually lead you into ill health. So please keep your metabolism high. Make sure you're eating enough food. Okie dokie. So let's talk about other factors then. So you come onto the 28-day plan, or you're starting the May challenge, or you're just starting out your keto journey. So how fast are you going to lose weight? Well, I don't know. It's going to depend on lots of factors, and I'm going to go through some of these factors so that you understand your individual space in terms of weight loss. So the first factor that is going to have a big impact on the amount of weight you lose is your metabolic history. By that I mean is, what have you done to your metabolism before this point? Have you yo-yo dieted? Have you been on a juice cleanse, which is 200 calories a day? Have you fasted and increased your metabolism? Have you been, on a very high calorie diet, so you have a high metabolism to begin with, and you're quite large, and you have a lot of body fat and everything else? So your metabolic history is going to have a huge impact on the rate that you lose weight. And what I will say is, if you have been on a low calorie diet or impacted your metabolism in any way, the number one thing you can do is to actually spend time sorting that out. And all I mean is eating nutrient-dense foods, bringing your calorie consumption up to a healthy level, to allow your body to feel reassured and to compensate your metabolism back up. So yeah, it just requires eating enough and eating really good nutrient foods to start nourishing the body and allowing it to actually know that it's okay to lose weight, to let go of some of the body fat, because you're no longer starving. So working on the metabolism is really, really important, and that hopefully happens if you start the 28-day plan or you start the May challenge. You can see some of the foods there. They're very nutrient dense, they're high in calories and they're high in fat, and they will help your body to start to metabolize food much quicker, and to burn fat as well. So I hope that you will take that on board. The next thing then is your thyroid function. Again, this is going to be to do with the damage potentially that you've done over the years. The thyroid is very, very sensitive to our metabolism and the amount of food in the environment, and can be easily damaged by low calorie dieting. So if you have issues with your thyroid, then obviously you may be medicated for that, but you may not know that you have issues with your thyroid. And again, the way that we're going to treat the thyroid and support the thyroid function is actually providing enough energy to the body to allow the body to heal the thyroid as well. So we can undo some of the damage that's done over the years, but it can take time. And that's why some people don't lose weight as quickly as they want to begin with. There is a lot of healing that needs to be done first. So we'll move on then. The next thing is gender. Now, whether we're male or female has an impact on our metabolism. It has an impact on our lean mass and how much energy the body burns in a day. So it's unfair to compare how a man will lose weight on a ketogenic diet and how a woman would, because those two systems are very, very different. The female body maintains a higher proportion of fat to lean mass than men do, and that's to do with our reproductive function. So we're actually designed to be slightly higher in fat than men, and that's because potentially not only do we need a battery to fuel us through periods of hunger and fasting, but we could potentially be carrying a pregnancy or to be feeding, or both. We could be pregnant and breastfeeding children. So in terms of how much battery a woman needs, it's actually far more than a man would need for those periods of fasting. So it's difficult to compare the two, and I think it's really important that if there's a couple dieting, that you understand the difference between how men lose weight and how women lose weight. It's very, very different, and we have different nutritional needs, and we will lose weight differently as well. Okay, so the next thing then is age. Obviously, as we age, our metabolism does decrease. Now, some of this is to do with nature. And another thing is how we treat our metabolism as we go through life. So we can stimulate metabolism, we can bring it back up, but we need to do it through nutrient-dense foods. And of course, then for women, there is the hormonal changes of menopause as well. And we know that the estrogen that we produce when we are menstruating still, we still have that cycle, actually has a regulatory effect on the amount of fat that we have on our bodies. Obviously, when that estrogen begins to dip at menopause, then not only does our metabolism slow slightly, but also that estrogen dominance isn't there, and we have more fat distribution around the abdomen and visceral fat as well. So instead of sending it to the hips and the buttocks and the thighs that the estrogen does, it starts to settle around the abdomen around menopause as well. So we've got several different factors that we need to take into account. Other things then is our muscle mass. The more muscular we are, the faster that we burn through fat, because obviously those lean muscles require a lot. Yeah, absolutely. So hysterectomy and menopause is going to be that hormonal shift, isn't it? That's not to say that you can't lose weight. Of course you can. It's just understanding that the rate of weight loss may not be the same as someone who hasn't gone through the menopause or hasn't had a hysterectomy. It's all about understanding your body so that you better understand the process, you can be more patient with your body, and you can give yourself a break, give yourself some love, and understand this process will still happen. It's inevitable. If you spend long enough burning your body fat, you will burn through it. So it will happen, but the rate at which you might lose weight might be different to someone else. And it's so important to understand that so that you don't compare yourself to a woman in your 20s and 30s who's eating the same as you. Okie dokie. So other things then, medication. Some medication can interrupt weight loss. It can have an issue with blood sugar, but also can impact things like the gut microbiome, which we'll come on to. So medication can impact weight loss. Again, you spend enough time burning body fat, the body fat will come off. However, it may not be at the rate that you would expect it to. So other things then, gut health we talked about. And our gut has a massive impact on the level of insulin in the body, our insulin resistance. Our gut has impacts on our cravings, what food preferences we have. It will have an impact on our hunger, our satiety, the rate at which food passes through the gut. So the gut microbiome, so those bacteria that live in our guts, line the gut, are massively important for weight loss. And this is something that I'm really keen to spend some time and write a blog about. We need to look after the microbiome. It's very important. We do that through removing processed food from the diet, removing sweeteners from the diet, and by actually supporting the bacteria with fermented foods, with probiotics, things like that, and giving them prebiotic fibers which they eat. So it actually helps them to grow and proliferate in the gut. So lots that we can do there, but I think the top tip for the gut is to remove the processed foods and the chemicals and the refined white powders which people are still putting in their food. Take these things out, and the gut will start to flourish in that whole foods environment. So liver health then, again, if you've had a fatty liver, or you've taken a lot of medication, and your liver's taking a bit of battering over the years, then the liver is massively important in ketone production, in breaking down fats, in LDL and cholesterol production, breaking down LDL cholesterol into bile acids. It's massively important in terms of digestion, because again, bile acids, we need them to break down the high fat diet. So our liver is really, really important. And if we've had issues with our liver, then the top things that we can do is support the liver by low carbohydrates, but also taking all that, the toxins away from the liver. So if we can reduce medication, then fantastic. If we can reduce the amount of processed foods and things going in, then that's going to help the liver. Obviously, reducing alcohol consumption will help the liver, and that is going to help massively with how you digest your food and how you lose weight. And the whole process of body fat burning is a lot to do with the liver. So other things then, well, there are, like I said, there are other hormones that actually have huge effects on our blood sugar and our insulin because of the blood sugar. And they are our stress hormones. Adrenaline and cortisol, so the things that we spike for our fight or flight reflex, and cortisol, which is that long-term stress hormone, can have massive impacts of keeping our blood sugar high. With high blood sugar comes insulin, because that's what insulin does. It's triggered when there's high blood sugar. And with insulin comes the storage and preservation of body fat. So it's actually stress that can actually keep us fat. So when I tell people about some of the top tips for losing weight, some of the tips are to do with reducing stress, increasing our amounts of sleep, for example, reducing the amount of work we do. Now, I am a workaholic. I'm sure you've probably noticed by now that I work 7 days a week, from early in the morning till late at night. I'm not, this is something you're going to have to just trust me about. But yeah, so cortisol, yeah. The apple cider vinegar. Apparently apple cider vinegar can help. However, in terms of gut health, I think it's far better to actually look at probiotics and reducing toxins in the gut than apple cider vinegar, because it is a fermented food. However, there are other fermented foods that are less acidic than that. So anyway, moving along. So stress and cortisol, very, very, very important. So sleep, lack of sleep can stop you losing weight. So if you ever needed excuse for an early night or a lie-in, here it is. Not sleeping enough is stopping you from losing weight potentially. So you need to rest the body. It's very, very important. Stress hormones, adrenaline, and being tired will keep your blood sugar high. And the whole point is we need to get that blood sugar down low. Okie dokie. So top tips then. This is probably what you've all been waiting for. So my top tips for weight loss. Number 1, low carbohydrates. And I mean low. You know, those sausages that have tiny bit of wheat in them, they gotta go. You know, that fruit that you think, oh, well, it's only a little bit, it's gotta go. Those carbohydrates and those hidden carbohydrates in your sauces and condiments and your yogurt and your berries and your nuts and your seeds, they are all adding up. So if you want my top tip of how to drop weight really, really fast and really, really effectively, then the carbs have gotta go. And that's the number 1 tip. They've got to come out of the diet, and that's going to allow you to have high levels of glucagon and start burning body fat at a rapid pace. It's going to basically give you 100% access to your body fat at all times. And the only times then that you won't be burning body fat is when you've got dietary fat. So for those couple of hours after your meal, you'll still be burning dietary fat. But as soon as that's gone, you're going to be into burning your body fat. And this is going to be a really, really fast way. Yeah, absolutely, Keris. We've all fallen into that trap, haven't we? There's so many hidden carbs that people need to be aware about, and things like pre-grated cheese, which you just wouldn't you wouldn't imagine people put carbohydrates in, but they are everywhere. So if you are buying something in a packet that comes from a factory and not a farm, there could be hidden carbohydrates in it. So if you're going to buy packet food, if you're still buying processed food, you're going to have to read labels. If you're going towards your whole foods, your meats, your fats, your leafy green vegetables, then you're going to be far safer. So I would say stick to the whole foods, but otherwise you're going to have to read labels, and you're going to have to look for the starches and the sugars and the sweeteners and everything else. Yeah, absolutely. Okie dokie. So that's top tip. Second thing then, we need to make sure that when we are eating, that we are eating a high fat and moderate carb. Yeah, absolutely. I'm apparently a bit obsessed as well, but whatever. I'm slim, so we can just get over it. Anyway, so when we are eating, we're looking towards a high fat diet, moderate protein. We want to give the body enough fuel to maintain that high metabolism. Yeah, absolutely, Gail. You need to buy real, natural, unprocessed cheese. Yes, and a grater if you don't have one, which amazes me because in the UK, everyone has a grater. It's a normal thing. We don't buy a lot of pre-grated cheese. But in the US, people are like, which grater do I buy? I'm like, well, just a grater. Anyway, so moving along then, high fat, moderate protein meals. Keep the metabolism high. Do it with really good quality fats. So I'm talking about animal fats, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, lard, natural fats in their most pure form. Get the metabolism really high, get the metabolism working, get the body burning fat. And then when you stop eating, you will burn body fat, and that's key to it. So you need to make sure that metabolism is high. If you eat a low calorie diet, if you're not feeding your body, you will drop your metabolism and you will find it harder and harder to lose weight. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep your metabolism high. Okay, next thing then, sleep. Sleep is very important, and early nights are actually more important than lie-in. So if you can get an early night, then that's fantastic, and that will help you lose weight as well. Fasting. We talked about this in last night's video, and for anyone who's joining us today, all the videos are kept on YouTube. You can find the link on the KISS website to the YouTube channel. You can find it in the pinned post in this group. And yeah, everything that I do is kept on YouTube, so you can find it there. I haven't uploaded yesterday's quite yet because I've been in work all day long. However, it will be there very, very soon. And we talked about fasting. So we talked about fasting from our last meal one day to our first meal the next day. So trying to get sort of 18 hours, even 20 hours of fasting over that period. We talked about whole days of fasting. So that's alternate day fasting. And we also talked about extended fasting as well. So that's more than 24 hours when we really start to go into our body fat. So we talked about those things. And fasting is the quickest way to burn body fat. Let's be honest. We remove the dietary fat as well. The body has no choice but to burn body fat. So fasting. After that then, talking about lean mass. So how do we increase the amount of lean mass on the body? Well, the best way is resistance exercise, and actually a bit of heavy lifting. So a little bit of weightlifting for women too will increase your lean mass and help you to burn body fat. So very, very important. Yeah, fantastic. Well done, Gail. Enjoy your fasting. So heavy lifting. So maintaining muscle mass is really, really important, and you do that not through your gentle walking or your aerobic exercise, but actually through challenging the big muscles in your body by lifting heavy amounts of weight. So I'm hoping to get my brother to come and do a session for you during the May challenge. He's probably going to be training me, so you're going to pretty much watch me suffer. But what I want to show you is the difference between sort of an aerobic exercise and exercise that will actually build lean mass and help you to burn fat really rapidly. So he's going to beast me in the gym for 20 minutes to show you how to do this, because he is the most incredible trainer. He's absolutely ripped, really muscular, really fit, really strong, and he's going to show us how to do it. So I'm not an exerciser, so it's going to be awful, and you're going to see me sweat and cry and maybe even vomit. So that'll be good fun anyway. So the next thing then, to remove junk foods and inflammatory foods from the diet. Again, had another conversation today with someone about removing some of the inflammatory foods from their diet, because it's holding you back. When there's inflammation in the body will hold not just the inflammation, but it will hold water around the inflammation, and it will also trigger a raise in blood sugar and a raise in insulin. So again, if you're inflamed, if there's inflammation in the body from peanuts or seed oils, or all the nasties that we want to get rid of, all the processed food and all the chemicals that we can't even contemplate what they are. Some of them are used as fertilizer, other things are used to as a pesticide, but they're in our food. All that inflammatory food is going to make the body try and store those toxins in fat cells with fat, and it's going to wrap them in fat to make sure that those toxins don't get back into the blood. You really, really need to start looking at the food. It may well be low carb, but it may be absolutely awful for you as well. So removing those inflammatory foods is really, really important. Yeah, absolutely, Sherry. You can come and join us. You can get beasted as well. It's going to be awful. Okay, so the next tip then is to eat nutrient-dense foods. The body will seek food until you nourish it properly. So when you're giving the body enough protein, enough fat, enough B vitamins, enough vitamin A, enough vitamin K, enough calcium, when you start nourishing the body, your body will start to be more comfortable and you will stop craving so much food. You need to nourish the body, and then you'll have that ability to fast longer, because your body will be well nourished and you'll have less hunger and you'll be able to go longer and longer burning your own body fat. So it's really key that when we do eat, that we're choosing nutrient dense foods. And I hope that you've all had a look at the list of nutrient dense foods in the public group files. They're there for everyone to see, but basically they are foods that I would recommend are on everybody's weekly shopping list. I'm talking about grass-fed beef and good dairy and green vegetables and good fats, and oily fish, and these things that should really be in a daily regular diet. They're in there. Take vitamins. Not necessary, Gail. Eat good food. We eat such nutrient dense food that we shouldn't have any need to supplement, really. We can get it. And when I have tracked food, and when I've put in the green and blue soup and the salmon and the beef and the butter and the things that we eat, we absolutely smash our nutrient, our recommended daily amounts. So it's not necessary to take multivitamins unless you've actually got a deficiency, or unless that you're not eating those foods. So I would always say eat nutrient dense foods, particularly things like organ meats, like grass-fed beef, things like coconut oil and butter, and your green vegetables and your avocado, and all these things that we talk about, our dairy, our fermented foods. Get them into your diet and you will not have vitamin or mineral deficiencies. Yeah. Cindy, if you're craving sweets all the time, it's normally an indicator of one or two things. Either there are hidden carbohydrates in your diet that you haven't got rid of, or two, you are simply not eating enough fat. And it's normally number two. People normally are not eating enough. They're in a calorie deficit and they're just not feeding their body. You absolutely have to get rid of all the carbohydrates and the sweeteners. They need to go out of the diet, and then you need to replace them with healthy natural fat right the way up to your target daily energy intake. You need to be right up towards the sort of 1,800-2,000 calories a day, and your sweet cravings will get smashed, and they'll be gone for good, I promise. So it's those two things: the carbs and not eating enough are the two things that will make you crave sweet stuff. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that can really help. Omega-3, so we're talking about our oily fish, our flax seeds, or omega-3 supplements if you don't eat those two things. You need to increase your omega-3. Omega-3 will help you to release fat from the body. We know from lots and lots of studies, randomized controlled trials, that omega-3 in the diet makes people slimmer. So omega-3 from your oily fish or your supplementation is really, really important. Coconut. Yes, coconut's fantastic. Eat coconut, Helen. Coconut oil is the best because you want that high fat. So always coconut oil, and it's amazing. And you can have it in coffee. You can put it on all of your food. You can just eat it with a spoon if you want. It's great stuff. Okay, so omega-3, vitamin D. I've had quite a lot of vitamin D over the last couple of days. I don't know if you've noticed how pink I've gone. But vitamin D is important. If you're not getting outside every day for a good 20 minutes, half an hour, then there's potential you could be vitamin D deficient. And I know that a lot of people in the UK, Northern Europe, North America, Canada are vitamin D deficient. We spend so long indoors that we're no longer getting the vitamin D that we need. So if you are deficient in vitamin D, then potentially that's something you can look at as well. Electrolytes. Electrolytes just help us feel better, and they're really important. Magnesium, potassium, calcium, sodium, they all help us to lose weight. So if you're wondering what on earth I'm talking about when I'm talking about replacing electrolytes, then again, head to the blog, the KISS blog, it's on the website. I wrote about electrolytes, what they are, why you need them, how you can get them, and how you know which electrolytes are imbalanced in the body. So you'll be able to look at your symptoms and understand potentially which one of those electrolytes you could be missing. Usually it's all of them, and slowly as you go through this process of learning that you get that right as well. Oh, coconut for Cindy was sorry, yes. Sorry, do apologise. I'm trying to keep up with this, but I've got a tiny little screen, so it's just flying past me, unfortunately. So I'm trying to keep up and read my piece of paper as well. Okay, so the last thing then, we talked about it, the gut microbiome, really, really key. Look after the bacteria in your gut. Yeah, absolutely. So too much sodium can make your legs swell. However, you can't live without it either. So it's getting that balance right. And what I will say is that if you are swelling, then potentially it's potassium that you need in order to keep that sodium in balance. And remember, there's a massive difference between water retention caused by refined salt and the difference we get when we use an unrefined salt, which is potentially lower in sodium but has other trace minerals. So if you move on to pink salt and have no more than about a teaspoon of salt a day over all your food and drinks, then you shouldn't, as long as you're replacing your potassium, have swelling issues. You can't live without sodium, so it's not something you can remove from the diet completely. But I will say that if you are eating processed foods, then you probably don't need to salt anything because there's so much salt in processed food. It's only when we go onto our whole foods diet and we start to remove those snacks and processed foods that we actually would need to replace sodium in the diet. So for me, I don't eat anything that has salt in, so I do have to salt my food. However, if you're still eating salted nuts or salted pork rinds or any type of shop-bought sauces, condiments, that sort of thing, then yes, you probably do have plenty of sodium and just need to look at potassium. For me, I don't eat any of it, so I need to. Where do you find the pink? I bought mine in a shop called Lidl. However, I know that all of the big supermarkets have Himalayan pink salt. I know Costco do. I know Walmart does. I'm trying to think of American foods that I know have pink salt. All of the major supermarkets now stock Himalayan pink salt. It's very, very easy to find. I guess it's big in the healthy eating community because, again, when you remove processed foods from the diet, you still have an absolute need for sodium in the diet, so we have to get it from somewhere. Okie dokie. So that's the last thing, gut microbiome. Look after your gut. Start to remove the chemicals from your diet. Start to replace the the gut bacteria with fermented foods. Realize that humans are not meant to be in a sterile environment. Things like dirt are very, very good for humans. And in fact, I think one of the worst things we ever did to kids was bath them. So we need that bacteria in the gut to actually help us with our weight loss and our overall immunity and health. So we need to remove the processed food from the diet to stop killing the bacteria. We need to remove the sweeteners from the diet because, again, they tend to kill off a lot of bacteria which are good and proliferate bacteria which actually make us crave sweet stuff. It's crazy. So we need to remove them. And we need to start putting back some bacteria into our body. So in terms of live cultures in kefir and kimchi and live sauerkraut, there is a difference. There's sauerkraut that's dead as well. Dirt pies, yay, Gail, dirt pies. Yeah, so we need to start putting some bacteria back. My favourite ways are with my cultured dairy. I absolutely love kefir and I love kefir cream as well. So you can have a look into that. Very cheap to make. You just need some cream and a kefir culture starter, which you can buy for, well, pence. And then you've got that daily supply really of good cultured food, but things like kimchi and sauerkraut, like I mentioned. But also, if you're not into your fermented foods, there's plenty of probiotics on the market which you can get hold of. But what I would say, if you are taking a probiotic, you need to change the strains. You can't take the same probiotic, well, you can, but it's not going to be as effective. Every month, every time you buy new probiotics, I would say go for a different brand or a different strain to have that huge diversity of microbiome in the gut, because that's the indicator of health, is that diversity. If you imagine that the microbiome is like a rainforest, with hundreds and millions and billions of different organisms all living and cohabiting together in that perfect ecosystem. If you bulldoze that rainforest and just plant pine trees, then you will not have that ecosystem. The other bacteria and the other things will not be able to grow. So definitely worth, if you are taking a probiotic, to actually change up your probiotic and have a look at different things as well. Have a look to diversify. And fiber's good too. So if we're eating some green vegetables, then that helps the gut microbiome too. So yeah, look after your gut. Oh, and the gut loves fat too. And it loves bone broth and things like that. So they're my top tips for weight loss. And I hope that you found that good. Philadelphia cream cheese. Having seen Philadelphia cream cheese in the States and comparing it to the UK, it has some dodgy stuff in it over in the States. So if you can find own brand cream cheese, then it's bound to have less stuff in there. But I've also been told that the block version has less additives than the tub version, apparently. Cream cheese is fantastic. In the UK, the ingredients of cream cheese are milk. Unfortunately, other places tend to put all sorts of junk in everything. So yeah, just be careful of additives and try to get food with the least amount of ingredients possible. Okay, yeah, so cream cheese is great. Yeah, and I would love to make my own too. And apparently it's very, very easy. In fact, dairy is something that most families who had a piece of land and their own cow would be making themselves. This is not a particularly industrial process. So in fact, I had a cheesecloth hanging from my counter the other day, and my mum was like, "Oh, it's like being in my grandmother's house with a cheesecloth hanging off the door." So yeah, it's not something that is hugely difficult to do and very, very rewarding when you start to make your own food too. Okay, all right, so I'm going to head off now. Done a long video again. I promised I wouldn't do another long one, but it has turned out to be a mammoth anyway. So that's my top tips for weight loss. And I'm going to leave it there, and I'm not going to carry on, and I'm going to say good night, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye all. Make sure you subscribe if you're on YouTube. Bye.